right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Sunny Side View. Of course, I'm your host, Sunny B, and today I have the truly exceptional guest with us, Miss Kelsey. Miss Kelsey, welcome, welcome, welcome to the Sunny Side View.
Yay! Thank you. It's so good to be here. So thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you. I read in your bio you have over 15 years of experience with working with exceptional individuals with diverse needs. So you definitely are going to bring a wealth of education, a wealth of knowledge to the table. So I want to dive right in because today I want to talk about how to advocate for your child. And so as we talk through advocating, I just wanted to have, an expert on there that can give us maybe some of the parents that don't know what to ask or that they should ask any questions. Someone that you can maybe assist us and kind of think through some of your years of experience. So, for some of our listeners who might be new to this topic, could you please define in your own words what exceptional children with diverse needs means? What does that mean to you?
Yes. So I love to call the kids that I work with exceptional children because it just means that they have an exceptional way of learning. And we all learn differently, number one. And I never want them to feel like because they learn differently from what I think we consider like typical learning, that something is wrong with them because of the way that they learn. I like for them to know that they're exceptional because your brain processes the information differently, right? But that's the unique thing. Like I always tell them, like, you think outside the box. You may not see it just black and white. You think bigger. You think in an exceptional kind of way. And that allows them to be able to bring another perspective to their social groups, in the classroom, to their parents. So when I think of the exceptional child, it's creativity, it's their uniqueness, it's how they function, how they present an idea. It even makes me, my kids, I'd be like, wait, I didn't even think of it like that,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and it just brings about a different kind of conversation. So, that's what it means when I think about, an exceptional child who has different I don't even like to call them challenges, really, Sunny,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have things that, that we work on, that we strive to do better, every day. So with my kid, I normalize it. So even for the
Yeah.
things, that I'm like, I'm an exceptional learner too. Like I tell them, this is how I learn. Or, we're able to exchange those ideas of how we can connect, like just how our brain processes that information.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking back on how, just thinking through my own like educational journey as a child, and I thought about how I never could sit still. I thought about how I would read, like, eat books for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like it was just flying through things, right?
Yep.
And I remember I remember my radio teacher in high school. It wasn't until I was like 10th grade high school, Mr. Hattersley. I'll never forget his name. And Mr. Hattersley said he saw me wiggling while I was taking a test, and he said, "Well, Sonny, why don't you just sit on the floor and take it? You can take it wherever you want." And so I laid on the
Wow.
floor and I took my test and I aced it. Like it was like the lights came out and it was like dun dun dun. Like I'm like I understand now. And so it was just amazing for to think like back then. I There wasn't a lot of talk about all of the different um, various developmental needs or emotional needs or behavioral needs that were included with that, right? And it wasn't until I was an adult that I was diagnosed with ADHD, where it was like, like everybody doesn't sit and wiggle their leg, everybody can't
Yep.
sit still. They're like, I was like, wait a minute, and just thinking about how even through my own diagnosis, like how anxiety shows up in that and what that means for me.
Yes.
So for me, that might mean that I force myself to take 4 classes when really I probably should take two. But in my mind is going so
Mhm.
fast. It's like, oh. And so sometimes when people say, oh, you just need to slow down a little bit, they're not really understanding that it's really the way my brain processes that makes me able to uphold it. And if I'm not doing it, it's almost like I feel down, like I'm, like you start to get all these different things. So I love that you said that about how people just learn differently. And so when we're talking about kids, when we're talking about young people, when we're talking about students, for parents or caregivers of children with these diverse needs, what do you think are some first steps that they should take to advocate effectively for their children? Now, as you think about that question, I'm gonna let everybody know that Kelsey was the first person that my husband and I were calling when we had questions about our own son, and this was like a year and a half ago. So she rode the wave with us for a year and a half, really supported us. So I don't have her on here as an expert that I haven't personally seen her walk alongside families and encourage, even our family, offer to work with our child's school, all of that. So I want everybody to know that. I want everybody to know that first. But what do you think about that as a parent? Or caregiver of children with diverse needs, what are some first steps that they should take to start advocating?
Well, usually what I will say when I do have a parent that reaches out, it usually comes from the school who has a concern because they usually look at it like disruptive behavior. And I always tell my parents, well, let's assess the disruptive behavior. Like what is it? And usually is that impulsivity, like, talking out, moving around in the chair. So I look at the behaviors and we assess it, and I say, okay, at what times? So I always say, like, get a baseline. Like, let's look at it. What's the behavior? Antecedently, what happens, and then, like, what's the consequences being applied? So before I will tell them, like, any resource or any strategy, I like to look at the behavior and see what's going on in that, in the classroom. I'm just going to use a school setting because that's a lot of times where the behavior is identified, at school. And so I have them to, talk to the teacher, figure out, what is happening. And then let's say that the teacher's like, well, it's during the time of math. So, okay, math is challenging because you do have to, be attentive in math. Let's say the child is out of their chair, or they're talking out, or they're fidgeting. I would say, okay, well, are we recognizing, numbers? Is the child comprehending? Are they not understanding? Because maybe there's like a disconnect with what they're trying to learn in math. So let's knock out, any dyslexia. Let's knock out, let's ask those questions of what it looks like. Is there fine motor skills? Is there maybe like just the delayed processing and the information isn't moving too fast? How are they learning? Are they far from the front? So there's questions that you have to be able, to ask the teacher. So I will always give my families questions to be able to ask, in the meeting. And I also say, be mindful of what you see at home. Start connecting the dots. If you see like the impulsivity increase at home during certain times and anxiety manifests, just begin to connect the dots in different settings and see what the similarities are. And if it is disrupting their quality of learning and it's also impacting their behavior, I say first, talk to your pediatrician. Have them to do, an assessment to see developmentally, see if there's anything that brings about a red flag of, I'm seeing this behavior at this frequency, this duration, this intensity. And usually what I will say is sometimes pediatricians may not always get it right, and that's okay. That's why we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists that you also can ask about certain behaviors that you have. So I always say, talk to the doctor, talk to the pediatrician. And then if you're still concerned, also talk to the school. Ask them to do like an evaluation at the school. Ask them to begin the process of, I don't want to throw a lot of terminology out there because then people will say, what's this? But ask the school to begin to do some observations on the behavior that you're concerned about. have them to say, hey, I'm concerned, during this time in math, I'm seeing an increase in behavior. Maybe there's, a disconnect, or maybe he needs like flexible seating, or she needs flexible seating. They need more breaks, brain breaks. They need movement. And we also have to keep our expectations realistic too of the child,
Yeah.
of the age. And so talk to your school counselors, school psychologists, talk to the people in the special education department to begin the process of doing some psychoeducational assessments, which that will help you understand cognitively, where they are, the academic, social, and emotional functioning. So begin the process of testing. There's nothing, I always say, there's nothing ever wrong with asking for those assessments in the school, because that's the beginning steps to help you advocate for things such as an IEP, a 504, to put those strategies in place that can help your child be successful.
Yeah, I know this is so good. I didn't want to stop you or anything, but I think one of the things that you said that really connected the dots for me was initially, people would assume that the first thing people say is that your child is misbehaves, or that they're bad, or that they have too much energy. Like those are kind of some words that I started noticing that people would say. And as I talked to other parents who have experienced the same, they were thinking that their child was being intentionally disruptive in a classroom setting, or in a setting where they should have been, it felt like they should have been able to sit down and be quiet. First, one of the first things we learned at the YMCA in all my years of camp is they used to say, you should only be, like, psychology says kids can only sit still as old as they are. So if they're 5 years
Yep.
old, they should be sitting for 5 minutes and then they need a break. People don't know that though. They don't know that.
No, they
They're so,
don't.
and so you think there are some things that is regular adolescent behavior, and yet because maybe our parents raised us a different way. My parents raised me, sit down, be quiet, don't move.
Yeah.
But now as we start to get more information and more educated, we're realizing like, hey, a lot of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is actually age appropriate. They're not going to sit still for
Yes.
15 minutes if they're 5 years old. It really doesn't work. And so I think that's the first thing when you start hearing those words, those trigger words like, oh, misbehave, and
Yeah.
over and over. Like I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm getting calls every day. Like, what is going on? You know. But what it was really telling me, and it was, I'll talk to you really. I talked to you and another friend of ours, and it was like, wait a minute, what is triggering them? And that this could be anxiety because he doesn't know how to act, he doesn't know how to respond or process it, and it comes out as misbehavior. And I see it in the older kids in middle school where I teach,
Yes.
where when they don't know what to do or they don't understand something, it comes out in anger, it comes out in walking off or walking out of the classroom. They're not being misbehaved, they're overwhelmed and they need a moment, you know? So no, that's so good. You just absolutely just blazed that. That was amazing. I was like, this is so good. So good. So let me
No,
ask,
but
go ahead. No,
what you
keep
were
going.
talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just gonna say, I even think back, to my daughter being in kindergarten, and she would come home every day about she had to pull a stick, and I was like, I remember saying to the kindergarten teacher, "What is she doing to have to pull a stick?" And funny, it was as simple as, "Oh, she wasn't sitting crisscross applesauce," or she was playing with her shoestrings, and I'm like, she's in kindergarten. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you expect? And I started asking those questions like, well, how long is she sitting? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
does she have to sit crisscross applesauce? Like, can she not stretch her legs? So we just
Right.
have to have, like, sometimes those realistic expectations of kids, and they're not being disruptive. It's like, what does their body need? Like, they need
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah, and I started to tell people, like, even our education system, of which I am a part of, so I get to say this now. We have for so long we have systematically conditioned people to be miserable in adult jobs by what we do in education.
Yes.
And so now it's like, yo, we got to do better. Like, we want kids to enjoy school so that they
Mm-hmm.
find something that they're passionate about to make that their life passion. And so I think that we're coming into a space where
Yes.
we're having a lot of real conversations around it. But you mentioned something earlier that I don't think people know the difference with, because I did not know the difference between, I thought everything was an IEP, right? I had no
Uh-uh.
idea about MTSS or 504 specifically. And so I did not know. I was educated that the IEP, or the individualized education plan, you get that if it's affecting your learning, correct?
Yes. Well, but here's the thing too. Also, your behavior. So it
That's
does
right.
have like specific, yes, inclusive goals and accommodations that your child needs for the instruction in the classroom. So
Mm-hmm.
yes. So it's more so like your behavior is where it
Mm-hmm.
really impacts for the IEP. Because it affects their academic, their ability to learn. Your
Yeah.
504 provides like that accommodation like without specialized instruction. So that's more like your physical or your mental impairment that affects like your ability to learn, and it also
Mm-hmm.
impacts your behavior.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So I love how talking through both of them, knowing the difference, working with NTSS teams to, talk through the accommodations for the 504, maybe for behavior or different accommodations that can happen, so that, they're holistically well. And sometimes that's before an IEP, which is, more, it's talking about really, like you said, things that are going to impede on the education space. So no, I appreciate learning the difference about those. Now, I know we were talking earlier, and you were just talking about how sometimes parents struggle with the behavior management. What advice would you have to give for parents who are managing the behavior of their exceptional children?
First, I'm going to say give yourself a lot of patience and a lot of grace, and do know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a lot of support out there for managing behavior. So I always tell my parents, self-care first for yourself, because if you're no good, then you're not going to be any good for your child. So make sure that you yourself have those healthy self-care practices in place, like whatever that looks like for you, but make sure you have that first. Managing behavior in a school setting, I will tell you, don't give up, advocate for your child, reach out to what we call, in our field, a BCBA, that can come help you manage behavior. And I know a lot of times, when people hear of a BCBA, which is, I'm sorry, a behavior analysis certified behavioral. Oh, sorry, I'm getting all twisted over here. Excuse me. Let me go back. It is a behavior analyst, certified behavioralist. So what they do is typically you hear that terminology with children who are on the autism spectrum, but that's not it. Their main job too is very diverse. They can come in and help you manage behavior. It doesn't have to be, just autism within itself. So reach out. The school, the counties typically have like a BCBA on board, so you can do one through private or public, but have a professional to come in and assess the situation and to see if you can identify that function of the behavior. So definitely have a team of professionals to help you. Um, Also, identify and see if there's some underlying issues, such as, if that behavior is manifesting from, ADHD, or if it is manifesting from autism, or,
Right.
and it can even be health wise. I think a lot of times we exclude like your internal. because it definitely can be internal and what a child is going through, and they're just not able to articulate to you how they feel or what's going on. And so a lot of times you'll see that, manifest in aggression. You may see it in, a tantrum, or what we like to call, and I feel like these big, big feelings of going from like 1 to 10 very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I think you were talking, and you also mentioned, as we go through, looking out for some of the things that are like paying attention to some of those things that trigger like a math class, or is there a particular time at home, where it becomes
Yes,
trigger, and it's like, hey, it's not always just a tantrum to be a tantrum. Like it could be
absolutely.
you're trying to tell, and we learn that with babies. We know
Yes.
babies are gonna cry, right? They're gonna cry when they're hungry, when they got something on their bottom, they done pooped. When they want their mama, when they want their daddy, they're gonna cry, right? But there's that one,
Yes.
they do one thing, they're gonna cry. So really trying to attach that, like, hey, understand that that is the language of babies. For an older child that may be 5, 6, 7, 8, their language may be throwing things, or their language
Absolutely.
might be kicking a door, or like it's
Hmm.
literally like you said, all these big feelings in this little body, and we want to address it now so that which is what you do, right? Where you're teaching them how to work through those big
Yes.
feelings so that they aren't 14, 15, 16, 20 still having to learn how to deal with it just because when we could have learned way earlier. I
Right.
remember I remember talking to you about the importance of social emotional learning,
Yes.
and really addressing. So I feel like there's a great segue into it as we talk about those big feelings. How can parents? What are some things that parents can do to be trained themselves? Are there classes? Are there workshops? Are there small groups that they can get with? To I think you said it at the beginning. You said, parents, hey, the first thing is you got to have patience with yourself. I think I learned that by being around other parents that also understood what I was going through, right? So
Yes.
are there spaces for that? Like, is that a thing?
Yes, so it is. There is an organization called Parent to Parents, and there's a website, and they have so many resources that people do not know about. It is for families as a whole. It can be for adults. It can be for children. But you go through it, and you can find like the title for social and emotional learning. So there's some churches that kind of host it, like just in a you don't have to, attend church or be a part of the church, but they will allow that space for some community organizations to come in and provide those classes for parents who want to know how to help their child in their social emotional learning. You also can talk to your pediatrician, and a lot of times they will have like, there's some doctors that I work alongside where they have like a resource book where they will connect you with different organizations in the community to target like social emotional learning. Even for the child, you can do it I always say do it as a family sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you can do it separately and as a family, but it just normalizes it. Where again, being inclusive, where there's nothing specifically wrong with you. We all learn each day how to become more self-aware in our social and emotional learning.
yeah.
So yeah, again, parent to parent, their website, and they offer so many different. They also have a telephone number, which I can give that to you
Okay.
um,
I can
at
put
the
it in the
end. But
description. Yeah, I can put it in the description too, so that people can find it and continue to reach out as well.
yeah, because to have that support, and you would be surprised. So I think a lot of times people don't know that you're not the only one dealing, with a child that has like these big feelings and
Hmm.
social emotional learning. And a lot of families who maybe are a little further along in the process, they can be a huge support to say, listen, we were here. This is where it started. These are the steps that we took. These are the things that worked for us. And maybe this didn't work for this family, but hey, you might try it, it might work for you. So having a support system, I will stress,
Yeah.
is so huge. It is so huge, because you can learn from each other. It allows the kids to connect as well, because you'll
Yeah.
be surprised, like how kids really, they understand, like, I struggle with that too. Like, this is what I
Yeah.
do. Like, I love when I hear my kids telling each other, like, if we all get together,
Yeah.
like, Miss Kelsey, I have this fidget, or did you show him like this puppet? But I love it because they normalize it. Because then they look at
Yeah.
somebody else like, what? You don't have a fidget? Like, I take 10 breaths, or I use the rainbow breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool. So yeah, those are some
Yeah.
different resources.
You said that I at the beginning of my the beginning of the school year, I told the as I was introducing myself, I told the students, I said, yeah, hey, and just so you guys know, I'm always up and moving, and sometimes I talk really fast, so it's okay to ask me to slow down if I said something too fast because I have ADHD, and sometimes my hyperactivity, I get so excited that I don't realize I'm talking so fast or I'm moving so fast. And everybody said, wait, you have ADHD? And I said, yeah. And then one of the kids said, oh, I do too. And then another kid said, I have ADD. And I said, well, we're going to be a great. And everybody started talking about it. So we had this really great, healthy conversation around
Yeah.
how sometimes people move faster, or how sometimes, one kid was like, well, I take medicine and sometimes it slows me down really loud. So in the afternoon, sometimes I get a little sleepy, but I'm not trying to fall asleep. We had really
Yeah.
adult, like mature conversation. So now the other students were like, oh, I wondered why you fell asleep the other day. And they were like, yeah, but
Yes.
they're like, I'm on a new dosage because we just started school and I didn't mean, I'm not trying to do that intentionally. And it really just allowed for this great space
Yep.
for it to be normalized, where it's like, hey, guys, just a heads up, ADHD is not a bad word. Like, but
Right.
so many of them have heard that with shame. One of the boys
Right.
said, Professor D, that's the first time anybody ever introduced themselves and said it, and you didn't like shy away from it. I mean, these are fifth graders, so they were like,
Wow.
I could believe it. And now sometimes I'll hear them, I'll hear them talking, and I'll be like rocking or something, and they'd be like, Professor B, you okay? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And now I'm starting to see as the kids, they'll start standing up and kind of rocking too, and they know I don't, I'm like, however you learn is however you learn. But as I was talking to the director of our exceptional education program, she said, a lot of times you have teachers who normalize it so much that you don't even realize that there are kids that are all across the board, that you're
Yes.
talking with. Because some of my kids, when I'm taught different classes and different things, some of them weren't diagnosed yet, because it was just,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not until I'm like, hey, we're meeting with parents and the parents are like, oh yeah, it's a real struggle for X, Y, and Z. And it's not a struggle in the classroom because, they
Yep.
teach us to be flexible with each child, even in the classroom. So it's been an interesting time, but definitely just learning from you, especially just last year and a half and seeing, all the work that you do. I have one last question for you. And I would, it's a free for all for you, but, is there a piece of advice that you would like to leave our listeners with to be able to say, hey, if you have any questions about your child or if you've noticed some things, what is there any type of advice that you would give for advocating for their exceptional child?
That's a good question.
Right?
Yes, no, that is a good question. I probably would say the best thing that I could say, if you notice some things with your exceptional child and how to advocate for them, ask all questions. I will say, don't shy away. Don't be scared that a question is a bad question,
Mm-hmm.
because the more questions you ask will give the person that you're asking an opportunity to be able to connect you to the resources that you need, right?
Yeah.
So if I have someone to call me and they are concerned, I tell them, because you can kind of tell when somebody's holding back. And I'm like, listen, I promise you, there's nothing I haven't heard. There's nothing I haven't seen. We are not here to judge you. Please don't feel like this is like bad behavior. Like I always say, there's not a behavior that you can't modify. Like it may take some time, but there are resources, there are strategies, there are professionals in place. So please don't be afraid to ask a question, or please don't be afraid to reach out to your school, because the school, I mean, there are amazing educators. I'm gonna go back a little bit to something you said about how it was like back in the day with the teachers and sometimes not really understanding. I have met some incredible teachers, and I am able to work in some incredible schools who are more than willing to go over and beyond. Some principals, the people who are over the exceptional, educational program for the child that learns in a unique way. So please reach out to your school. I know sometimes people have like, like these preconceptions about the schools, but they really are. There are some that are, that are here to help you. And let me tell a parent, if you don't get the help that you need, or you feel like you're not being heard, please continue. Go to the next person in that school. I always say everybody has a boss. So, and if it stops there, there's so many resources, and Sunny, I'll give them to you, like to reach out, depending upon the school. But please don't feel like your voice is not being heard, because there's somebody that will hear your voice. So definitely utilize the resources within the school. Reach out to, somebody like me who works in behavior, social, emotional, learning. So Google is your best friend too. Do your due diligence, but to reach out to like a professional, but ask your doctor, and then word of mouth. Like, ask somebody, do you know somebody that can help me with this? And I promise you, there's at least somebody that knows somebody who's had to ask those questions about how to, who I can talk to advocate for, my child. So I will please ask the questions, ask your doctor, ask the school. And even if you don't worry about the terminology. If you don't really know the correct terminology, just explain the behavior that you're seeing. Like, listen, when my child gets, if whatever the behavior is, and I'm seeing like it's extreme and he's kicking and he's yelling, I'm concerned, right? Like, please don't look at it like it's just normal, maybe behavior to where the child's just bad. Like, no, like ask those questions. So just there's no dumb questions. So always ask.
I love that. And I'll add to, on top of what Kelsey the expert said, Sonny the parent is gonna say, if they don't hear you at the school, move them. Move them.
Okay, I didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you did. I didn't know how to look. I was thinking,
if they're not listening, we have a legal obligation to give every child, especially exceptional children, the least restrictive environment. If you feel like your kid, I tell every parent, you are the expert at your child, which is what you've been saying, Kelsey. Like, hey, pay attention to the stuff you see at home. I am the expert on my child. If you feel like you're trying to see it, and the doctor or the teacher, they're not saying that you all aren't in alignment. It's a collaborative work. Move your kid. Go to another doctor. Go to another teacher, because there are people out there who have teams that are ready and well versed in how to serve every kid. And so, just like Kelsey said, you get in touch with the experts and ask them for their recommendations. Say, hey, do you have a school that's in this area? Do you know somebody who knows somebody? Because I want to make sure that my kid is not going to be a guinea pig. And so you have the right to say that. So I always want to encourage, because I had to do it.
I'm going to co-sign in that. I was thinking that now, because I will tell my family this is me, and I don't mind saying this on record. I am forever telling them, listen, if we go in this meeting, I don't care if it's public or private, And let me say this. I'm glad you brought that up, Sonny. Let me say this too. Sometimes schools will make you feel like, to keep you there, oh well, nobody else is gonna take this behavior, or you're gonna have to go this route. No, no, and no. So please continue to advocate for your child. And if that program does not fit, or that school, yes, I do agree. You have the right to move your child.
Absolutely. I did it. Ask me how. Y'all call me. Yeah.
Yes, you did. He's thriving, okay?
And he's
They're both
thriving.
thriving.
So
Yes.
thank you so much, Kelsey. I just love you so much. I'm so thankful that you got to come and share your expertise, yeah, and all these things. So this is going to conclude our episode on the Sunny Side View. Again, we have to thank our incredible guest, Kelsey Hoke, for joining us and shedding light on this crucial topic. We hope this information has been valuable to you, our listeners. Remember, advocacy is a powerful tool to ensure that all children receive the support and opportunities that they need. So until next time, stay sunny, everyone. I love you and God bless.
Thank you for listening to my Sunny Side View.